Hello and welcome everyone to this very important video where we will take a look at Germany's next chancellor and a company that's infamous at this point, that is actually the company behind that chancellor and installed that guy, and why this is so concerning and very important to understand for everyone in Germany, but also everyone in the Western world. So let's take a look at what just happened. I had a video on the election in Germany where the CDU won. Right, the CDU became the biggest party in Germany in the latest election in February. There was a special election because the government was breaking down. And what happened here are the election results, is that here you see the old results from 2021, here, and here. And here you see the new results. And as you can see, the CDU is number one and the number two is the AfD. What does that mean? The old government was a government of the Greens, the Social Democrats, and the FDP in Germany. That here is a libertarian party that was pretty small. Here are the Greens, which is Germany's woke party. They are hyper woke people. And then you have the SPD, the Social Democrats that are leftists, but like more blue dog Democrat types with the leftist woke touch, but they're super woke here by the Greens. The Linke, these are communists, literally. They even say themselves they're communists, so it's not a derogatory term. They are the former single party of the German Democratic Republic, like the dictatorship in East Germany. This is literally the party, which is pretty astonishing. At least they're honest about their intentions. Then you have the CDU-CSU, which are kind of the Republicans, extremely rhino Republicans. And then what happened in Germany is, instead of having a Trump revolution, a MAGA revolution inside the Republicans, Germany had the establishment of a new party, which is more common in Europe, like Le Pen in France, that is not part of the Republicans, but split out, pulled some of them over, pulled some of the libertarians over, and created a new party. And as you saw in this election here, there was a massive 100% boost of that new party, the Alternative for Deutschland, for Germany. Some people say it's right-wing. It's more importantly, it's an alternative. They say all these parties actually suck, and actually they look different on the outside, but from the inside, they're all the same because they're colluding all the time against the German people. We are the alternative to all of them. So that's happening. And you see they had this giant 100% leap from 10% in 2021 to 20.8% in 2025. I reported this in a separate video, what happened here. The CDU went from 24% to 28%, which looks good, but historically that's a total disaster. 24% was a joke. The CDU normally was at 38, 40% before. Oh, the CDU won, but much less convincingly than they should have. And what happened after this election? It happened in February. In March, this new guy here, Friedrich Merz, the guy who won, like this guy, the CDU guy, he did something that was unthinkable to a lot of people. Hey, creating these videos is a lot of work. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Now let's get back to the video. He immediately called in the de-elected parliament. He had 4 weeks left after the new election. For 4 more weeks, he was allowed to call in the old parliament that was just kicked out of office. And why did he do that? Because he knew in the new parliament, he wouldn't have had the majority votes needed for a constitutional change, a change of the German constitution. Very serious business, especially if you want to change the constitution with the old parliament, because the new parliament that the people of Germany just elected would not have allowed that. You're basically telling the people of Germany, well, you voted for this new thing, but this new thing I don't like. I will call in the old thing to just quickly change your freaking constitution. And what did he do in the constitution? He did 2 shocking things. First of all, he unlocked $1 trillion or euros in additional debt. His number one promise in his election campaign was, I will never raise the debt ceiling. It's something like the debt ceiling. You needed a constitutional change. He said, this will not happen under me. Within weeks of getting elected, using the old parliament, he changes the constitution to do the exact opposite of what he promised, $1 trillion in additional debt. And in order to get the votes from the crazy people, the Greens, he even said, I will give you more concession screens. What do you want in order to vote for this stuff? And the Greens said, well, we have a great little ask. can you write the climate stuff into the German constitution? And the climate stuff means climate neutrality, whatever that means. It's basically a blank carte blanche to do crazy things in the name of the climate into the constitution, which is very important, because if you have it in the constitution, it gets much more power. You can do much more little tricks politically. You can point now to the constitution, says, well, the constitution says, protect freedom and all these things in Germany, but also it says protect the climate. If the constitution say protect the climate, and I say that means take away the freedom, well, bad luck. Now it's in the constitution. And Merz said, oh, no problem. Let's put it in there. It's probably some good leverage in the future that we can use against the German people. So that was absolutely appalling. And I did a video on that. And what happened now, I just did it last week. You saw maybe the video, that the CDU is getting destroyed. Because even the German voters, the little sheeple in Germany that are not, the people who didn't get the message yet, you have 20% of Germans or German voters who absolutely get it. They are not sheeple. They have their own opinion and form their own minds, and they vote AfD. The rest is very sheeple to not understand what's going on. But even these have now pushed the AfD into the lead, and the AfD leads now as #1 party in Germany. And they turned within weeks after this very treacherous act that comes close to a coup, potential coup, constitutional coup. They turned an 8% lead of the CDU over the AfD into a -1% loss, right? The CDU went from 28% to 25%, and the AfD from 20% to 26% because of that. So Germany is pissed. Germany, the German voter says, are you kidding me? This is too much even for us. You can't do that. You have to also understand the CDU voters. They are not crazy people. CDU voters are still kind of conservative. They don't like chaos and treason. It's not their favorite thing. They like law and order. And now this guy does crazy things. So you see a huge run to the AfD and say, okay, we've had it. And in this video, I want to not focus so much on the political dynamics here. That's the other video. I want to focus on what's even happening. Like what is behind that crazy behavior? Because that is very important to understand. Once we understand how someone like Merz, who's definitely not dumb, he's very smart, in my opinion. Why is someone like Merz committing this level of treacherous behavior in front of everyone, like a crazy person? When we know he's not crazy, he's smart. He might be ruthless, but he's smart. Something doesn't add up here. Hey, if you want to stay ahead of politics everywhere, join us in Pioneer Lands. We track politics, capital markets, and AGI disruption. It's free and self-organized for people who look through the noise and deception. Link in the description. Let's get back to the video. Something doesn't add up. And that's such an interesting question to ask, because this high visibility act of treacherous behavior is now bringing something to light that explains actually much more than just this little problem in Germany. It explains what's happening in the United States. The other treacherous acts of Biden and the Biden administration. Why would they open the borders and swamp America with illegals? Why would they go into debt like crazy? Why would they ship $300 billion to Ukraine into a corrupted government with some phony excuses that everyone knows are phony and dumb? Why are these people doing it? Are they all delusional and crazy? Very unlikely. Why is Great Britain being destroyed in the most vicious way by its elites? That they also open the borders. There are rape gangs all over the place. They violate the rights of the British citizens. If a citizen speaks up, he goes straight to jail for free speech. Why do they try to put Le Pen in jail in France? Why do they destroy Sweden and make Sweden the rape, capital and country of the world? The most peaceful, perfect Nordic society got destroyed by their leaders. Why is this all happening? Craziness is a bad explanation. People are not that crazy. There must be something else behind it. So I think Merz is the perfect linchpin to actually understand what's going on. So this is the point of this video. And we start with the all-decisive question, cui bono, which is Latin for who benefits, right? This is a golden rule to understand geopolitics. when you have all this crazy stuff going on, you think, oh, are they crazy? Are they infected by a woke mind virus? Is it blue-haired little crazy people who have now the power? That is never the right explanation. You have to ask the question, who benefits? And benefits means power and money. So let's look at war, because Merz is big into war. He tried to attack Russia, actually, with the Taurus missiles that Trump just made illegal, fortunately. So Trump found a way to prevent the Germans from shipping very dangerous mid-range missiles into Ukraine, where they could have attacked, the Zelensky regime could have attacked Moscow under German supervision. And the Americans fortunately found out a way to stop the Germans from doing it, the Merz guys. So why are they so war obsessed? And the climate hoax. What's going on with the climate hoax? Why do they want that? Who wants that? For those of you who are into climate change and everything, what do I mean with climate hoax? I don't mean that global warming is not happening. I don't mean it's not man-made. I mean the political action to stop climate change, which is for many reasons ridiculous. The destruction of Germany's economy in the name of the climate, when Germany has zero impact on the climate globally. So that makes no sense. So who loves war and the climate hoax? And I want to go into a little explanation here. War. So you think as a citizen, war is a bad thing, because war means to bomb people, kill a lot of people, you bomb all the buildings, you flatten the cities, and then you have to rebuild the whole thing. So as a responsible citizen, you say, why would we do this to other people? Why would we do this to the Ukrainians? Why would we do this to the Russians? Why do we fuel war when war means to bomb everything, flatten the cities, destroy all that stuff, and then have to rebuild it? Because you think, well, if I was a citizen, first I pay for the bombs and kill a lot of people, then I have to pay for the rebuilding. I have a double expense. That's horrible. On the climate hoax, well, what does that mean? Similar things. Climate hoax means you have to destroy your infrastructure. Like, let's destroy the nuclear plants, let's destroy the coal plants, and then rebuild everything with solar stuff, right? That's exactly what Germany tries to do. You think, well, first I have this beautiful energy infrastructure, I destroy it. That costs money just destroying it. Then it's gone. Then it costs more money to rebuild it with something less efficient. Then I have a less efficient thing. I need even more. That's completely nuts. Both are massive productivity destroyers. Massive productivity destroyers. And what does it mean? Productivity destruction. It means normally you invest to make more money. But in war and rebuilding, you invest to make less money. That makes no sense, at least for you. But there's something called debt. And basically, if you do this, you need more debt, right? If you start being very stupid as a household, instead of investing to make more money, you invest to try to destroy your own money. It leaves you poor. But what happens if you're poor? You need debt. That is why Merz, because he already had the plan. Let's take our money to destroy our industry for the climate. Let's take our money to destroy Ukraine for the war. And let's take more of our money to build a new industry after we destroyed ours, and take our money to rebuild Ukraine after we spent the money to destroy it. Of course, you don't have that money because you're not doing anything productive. You're just destroying and then build up again what you destroyed. And that means you need to borrow money. And that's exactly what Merz just did. He said, oh, I'm going to use my new power to borrow $1 trillion to do all the mad stuff that doesn't make us money and destroys people, by the way. Okay, that sounds very dumb, but you have to understand, in the economy, wasting crazy amounts of money means you give it to someone. You give it to someone who gets the money. Everyone's expense is another man's revenue. And every man's debt is another man's asset, right? If I borrow a lot of money and push myself and my country and my people into debt, someone else owns the debt. He owns my people. So someone benefits, and that someone is BlackRock. Some other people too, but let's talk about BlackRock and what their role is in this entire thing. It's the world's largest asset manager. They're sitting here in New York in Midtown, north of Central Station. They own roughly 10% of everything in the stock market, to make a rough estimation, of the DAX in Germany, of the NASDAQ, of the S&P. Go to any company you want that is big enough. Google, Tesla, unfortunately, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Rheinmetall, Deutsche Bank. It doesn't matter. BlackRock owns 5 to 10 to 12%. And if you don't believe it, look it up. They literally own all that stuff. They also have a massive share of government debt. They own 2.2 in global government debt, a lot of that US debt, but also German debt. BlackRock is not a normal business because they are not a business. They are an asset manager. So they just own stuff on behalf of other people, but they manage it. And then they charge little, shares, percentage shares. And they own significant shares of over 10,000 companies, blue chip stocks, every stock you can think of, every big company. Also, they have significant media influence, right? They have control over pharma because they own a lot of pharma stocks too. Biggest shareholder in a lot of pharma, biggest institutional shareholder in a lot of pharma stocks. And as you know, pharma controls the US media because pharma represents 25%. Pharma advertising spend, despite being completely senseless, generates 25% of traditional media revenue, of Fox News, of CNN, MSNBC. Look at it. Just go do your research. How much of their total revenue of these companies comes from pharma ads? So if you control pharma, then pharma controls the media. That's why you don't see any criticism of any drugs in the media. Of course, they can just destroy the companies if they wanted to. But who's behind it? BlackRock, biggest shareholder. So they also have direct ownership of media. I'm going to the media in a second. For example, 18% of Fox News owned by BlackRock, 16% of CBS, 13% of Comcast, 5 to 10% in all 40 DAX companies in Germany. They own 5 to 10% in Bertelsmann. That includes RTL, Pro7, Springer, Zeitung. BlackRock owns it all. So now that we understand the importance of BlackRock, led by a guy named Larry Fink, by the way, he's the boss. He came up with the whole plan. Let's understand what the incentives are. Cui bono. What is the perfect world for BlackRock? And what is the worst world for BlackRock? First, think in first principles. What do they want? Don't think in conspiracies, they're inefficient. Think about what does BlackRock just want? The worst world for BlackRock is if you are surrounded by governments in the United States, in Germany, in Europe, all over the place, where the governments would be sovereign, governed by their own people, and pursuing balanced budgets with no debt. If these governments would also productively invest and think about how do we make our citizens rich and happy, how do we charge them a little taxes and then use these taxes very efficiently? How do we secure the borders, make the families happy so you as a family father or a family mom can do whatever you want to do, be prosperous and happy and stable. You get to know your politicians. You say, this guy is very good. He wants to make Germany great. This guy is bad, wants to make Germany bad. And, we help countries with war if they're attacked, but we don't fuel endless wars. And if we invest in war, we want the war to stop soon and lead to efficiency and justice, right? That would be horrible for BlackRock because the governments wouldn't offer them any debt. They wouldn't issue treasuries. They would not, create a lot of demand for weapons. They would have media that doesn't lie. So you can tell the people wrong things. That would lead to closed borders, for example. Closed borders lead to stability and safety. That leads to happy families that can pay attention to politics. And then it's a vicious cycle for BlackRock. Then they become even better in managing their little countries. No debt, they're losing 2.2 trillion, where they get 5% interest. That's a lot of money. That's 100 billion. Gone. Very bad. They can't do wars. Lockheed Martin drops. Rheinmetall drops. That's very bad. Then the media gets decorrupted, uncorrupted. Then they can't lie about pharma anymore. The pharma drops. Horrible. That is a very bad world for BlackRock. But what is the best case for BlackRock? The best case is that governments keep being dumb, keep creating more and more debt for their people, create an increasing dependency on the debt holders. So you pay taxes, but all the taxes are not being used for your country. They go straight into the interest payments. And if they're being used for the country, they're not being used for the country. They're being wasted, like Mertz's 1 trillion infrastructure and defense spending for absolutely nothing. Infrastructure means climate hoaxes, and defense spending means funneling that stuff to Lockheed Martin, Rheinmetall, and Ukraine corruption. So that is very good for BlackRock because, you can create this unproductivity, you can tear down everything, you then have to hire BlackRock companies to rebuild everything, you can bomb everyone, pay for the bombs, and BlackRock gets the money, then pay for the reconstruction, and BlackRock gets the money through real estate companies. That's what you want. And all of that paid by taxpayers and the debt they're incurring that is owned by that company. Okay? So in other words, let's make it economically. You are forced to work, let's say, 20% harder and give 20% of your life up as a little, feudal, little serf. And, you work 25% longer, you see your family 25% less to compensate for all that debt. And 15% of that covers inefficiencies and waste. 5% goes directly to BlackRock as interest and 5% as growth to their companies. Done, solved. That's a beautiful world for BlackRock. Not so beautiful for you. And as a side effect of that, they can also install the right politicians, have the media keep lying to you, and create a life that is lonely, scared, disorganized, and poor. Why is that important? Why is it important to keep the society and keep the citizenry of America, of Europe, of Germany, of UK, France, of Canada? Why is it so important to keep you lonely, scared, disorganized, and poor? Because if you're lonely, scared, disorganized, and poor, you have so many problems, right? If your family gets harassed by some crazy migrants like in Europe, everyone gets attacked with terror attacks, your kids can't go to school anymore and are scared, your daughters get harassed. Like, what is the one thing you don't do? Think about these things. You're scrambling to keep it under control. So open borders are very important to create the chaos needed to distract from that. DEI and race wars, the most random invention ever in the 2010s as a response to Occupy Wall Street. That was pretty astroturfed that we are suddenly all woke and race war people. Perfect. And that is also very important that race wars and DEI, the new left, the new crazed left, it's very interesting that there's one big thing in the new crazed woke left that is suddenly absent. And that is not a random thing. That is a thing that was so important in the past to the left. It's called the class war. It's very interesting that no feminist and no leftist anymore talks about, what about the rich people? So this whole topic of the rich people is gone suddenly. We are all just race warring each other or gender warring. Oh, the rich people, that's nothing special. Like, we don't have to worry about that. Very interesting. Why is this gone? Climate panic, also perfect. Climate is the perfect story because imagine there would be something so big, it involves the whole planet. No one knows exactly what's going on, but we're all going to die somehow. And we need all these diffuse policies to stop it somehow. It keeps you totally scared and confused, and you can't do anything other than giving more and more power to these politicians. Perfect. And then, of course, war, as long as it's not nuclear war. War is always perfect. I'm joking, right? I'm saying for BlackRock, not for us. So maybe you ask yourself, what does it all have to do with Friedrich Merz, with the guy who won in Germany? Why am I saying he's installed by BlackRock? Am I just a conspiracy theorist? What's going on? And why would Merz do all these things on behalf of BlackRock? Right? Is that just random? But if you do a little research, not on Wikipedia, Wikipedia scraped it, but all over the place, you see this. Isn't that interesting? Germany's CDU elects former BlackRock executive as their leader. Wow, that's weird. How is that possible? Friedrich Merz is a BlackRock executive? Maybe he was an unimportant guy. He was just having a little gig here or there. No, he was the chairman of the board. That's not an unimportant job. That is the boss that can fire the CEO, more or less. He was chairman of the board of BlackRock Germany. So that means he reported or had a direct line to Valerie Fink. That was not random. Why would BlackRock pick him, a politician, to make them the most powerful BlackRock executive in Germany? Well, you know why. Because of what just happened. So look it up. It's not a conspiracy. Actually, Bloomberg reports that. That was in 2022, I think, when he became the CDU boss. And he was BlackRock chairman of the board in Germany from 2016 to 2020. This is not a random little coincidence. It just tells you what's really going on. And the lesson from that is that we live in a world We always have lived in a world of ruthless exploitation, unfortunately. And that exploitation happens not just with random countries. It's not about the past. It's not about colonization and things like that. These are all distractions. The real exploitation happens with you. And of course, no one wants to say that, because that's the actual truth. And that's the one thing you shouldn't know. That's why I'm telling you. And you have to understand, that's very important, that people like that have no right to do this to you as Europeans or Americans or Australians or Canadians. These are your countries. You are the rightful owners of Germany, not Merz, not BlackRock, and not its minions. It's fine to provide credit to states and governments. It is not fine to actively turn them into corrupted entities that act against the interest of their own people. That is not okay. And you should not allow that from happening. You should also understand that the people who are actually not playing along, like Trump and the AfD and Le Pen, and all the other alternatives, the reason everyone in the media says they're Nazis and they're this and that, derogatory slurs against them, is because they're not playing along. And regardless what you think of these people, they are not perfect. Trump has problems, the AfD has problems, but these problems pale in comparison with systemic global corruption designed to oppress everyone, to extort and exploit you and the people around you and your people, your country. It's just not okay. The whole thing is not okay. That's why I'm making this video. I want to appeal to everyone, stop listening to these corrupted infrastructures that are controlled from the top, from people who do not have your best interest in mind. This is also not a complex global conspiracy. It's just straight on economics. There's Larry Fink, he has BlackRock, he has all these shares, and he wants your money. I think it's to some extent even his right to want that, but it's your right to push back hard and keep people accountable. And whatever flaws are in these alternative parties, you have to spot and identify the parties who do not play along with this game. And you have to watch them closely. I'm not saying Trump is immune to this kind of corruption, but he's a little bit more immune because he's a special character. The AfD is also not immune to this corruption because guess what? Alice Weidel, I'm a big fan. I think she's amazing. But guess who she worked for? Goldman Sachs. So she has these ties too. And I'm not saying Weidel is as corrupt as Merz. We just have to watch out for it and keep them all accountable. But for now, she's a much better option. Of course, Goldman Sachs is also partially owned by BlackRock. So keep out. It doesn't mean everyone who worked for BlackRock or Goldman Sachs is completely corrupted, but you understand how it works now. So keep an eye on them. Find the entities that are least corrupted. And one way of finding them, if they're called Nazis, that is a very good indication that maybe they're actually not corrupted and maybe they're more on your side. And that's why the other side uses derogatory terms like Nazi slurs to paint them in a picture so you don't want to vote for them. Think about, just understand the system. And I can just encourage everyone, especially in this age of AGI where everything changes and dramatic changes are coming to the economy that will dramatically shift the scales, push the scales even more in favor of the capital owners. It will push the entire economy in the hands of corporations who control AGI, and these corporations are at least partially controlled by BlackRock. It is very important that all of us seize control of our capital, start managing it ourselves, because to conclude this video, you can't fight these mega trends of capital accumulation, for example. You have to become part of the people who own the capital. And then you have to make sure BlackRock doesn't get its little hands on your capital. Because BlackRock might have $11 trillion under management. It's not their money. It is your money. It's the pension money. It's the fund money, the ETF money that you give them. So once we stop giving them our money and ideally seizing control of our own capital and investing it and getting much higher returns than BlackRock ever could, because they're not optimizing for returns of your money. They're optimizing for accumulation of the maximum money they can and then controlling it and then making their own money, right? So not giving them your money is very important. First of all, to stop the madness. And second of all, to make more money. because you will make more money if you become good in investing your own money. So all of these are the reasons we are building Pioneer Lands. Pioneer Lands, what is that? Pioneerlands.net. You can see it in the description, where we meet and have conversations like this to understand what's really going on, not fall into conspiracy theory traps, but understand very level-headed and clear-eyed what the hell is going on and why our government's behaving in such treacherous ways and literally actively destroying us, their own people. Now you know why. It's all, logical once you understand it. It's not rocket science. It's greed and power. Very straightforward. And we need to, wisen up a little bit, do smart things, and also make sure politicians like that will never get elected again. And from there, we can take it, we can build effective communities and use all these insane opportunities that are now coming up in the age of AGI to build futures that we actually want and avoid the doom loop that AI also opens up. So time for some self-governance, time to liberate our dollars and euros, seize control of them, bond together, create trusted communities, and actually become self-governed people who are free from this kind of little games they're playing. So I hope that was helpful. Let me know what you think, and see you very soon.